And welcome to Pro Football, first 50 years where we take the past and we bring it back to life. Now, I'm strictly talking the first 50 years here, 1920 to 1970. I mean, you can go online, especially if you're going to go back and check out a game from like the 20s or the 30s. Obviously, you can find a box score, who won, who lost, who scored a touchdown, how far a field goal was that someone kicked, what the attendance was, where the game was played at. You might be able to starting lineups for each team. Exactly what happened during the game. Well, thanks to old newspaper articles, we get to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each and every game during the first 50 years of professional football. Now, a little news flash here for you. Ain't no fancy videos or nothing like that. All there is you and me for the next 30 to 60 minutes. So if that's all right with you, let's get it on. And today's game, it's a rematch. The New York Giants at the Chicago Cardinals. They just played 2 weeks prior. At what? Who? What the? Metropolitan Stadium. Isn't that Minnesota? I'm glad you asked. Yes, it is. We're going to go over that in a little bit here. It's a little interesting. You got a little bit of a story here on this. As I said, these teams played each other 2 weeks prior. And this is the Chicago Cardinals. I said once again, we'll go over this a little bit. It's their home game. 2 weeks prior, the Giants and the Cardinals have played at Yankee Stadium. And this is November 22nd, 1959. So November 8th, 1959. Both these teams played in Yankee Stadium. I mean, my goodness. If you slept through that whole game, you didn't miss much. The Giants won a snoozer, 9-3. Thankfully, this game was a little bit more exciting. Spoiler alert, the Giants would win this one as well as they did the one 2 weeks prior. These two, you couldn't be more opposite. I mean, the Giants finished this season at 59, 10-2. Oh, my buddy Manny's here. The Cardinals finished this season, 1959, at 2-10. I mean, these teams were going in exact opposite directions. This was truly the glory times for the New York Giants, 56-63, 6 championship games in 8 years. They only won one of them, but the Cardinals, their time was out of the 1925 when they won their first one was it was the late 40s. They had a very good team. They won the championship in 47, went back to the championship game in 48, lost in a snowstorm. Man, I love it. Against the Eagles, 7-0. Now, that was football. Yes, I mean, the Cardinals, they've been playing second fiddle for a long time to the Bears. The Bears truly were the number one team in Chicago. As I said, the Cardinals had some good team. They had some good players without question. They had some good teams, but for the most part, the Bears, so the Cardinals always had a hard time with the fan base. They wanted to get out of Dodge. And luckily, they would get their chance in 1960. They would move. They would become the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, let's go over it. I got a lot of stuff on this one, so I just need to shut up and let's start rolling there, because if I don't start sharing some of this stuff, I'll be here about 4 o'clock in the morning. So, all right, so we got the Giants schedule right here. I mean, the Giants, their exhibition, they were what they were 3-3, I think it was 3-3. Yeah, 3-3. But once again, that was exhibition. But you see, after the first 2 weeks, they were 1-1. Actually, everybody in Eastern Division was actually 1-1 after 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, everybody was tied for first place, or everybody was tied for last place, however you want to look at it. But if you'll notice here, the rest of the season, the Giants only lost one game, and that was the week prior to this game against the Pittsburgh Steelers at Yankee Stadium. The Giants had the Giants had their third string quarterback in there, Don Heinrich, he did not have a good game. Once again, he was the third string quarterback for a reason. He had played for them before, but when you put the ball in Bobby Lane's hand with about a minute or so to go in the game, and he has a chance to beat you, sooner or later he's going to do it. And he made the Giants pay the week prior. But you'll see here the Giants would win. So, the Giants played not back-to-back 9-point games. They hadn't scored a touchdown since November 1st. So this will be the first touchdown in like 3 weeks that the Giants have scored against the Cardinals. Yeah, but you'll notice here, they start getting their guys back to health, offensive guys back to health, and they would go on a nice run here. And they would win their final 4 games, and they would wind up winning the division, kind of pretty much going away. They were 10-2, and in second place was the Eagles, and the Browns both finished 7-5. But we look here at the Cardinals. I mean, you see a lot of W's right here. Well, that's what we're going to see. We're going to see a lot of L's right there. I mean, my goodness, they won. Was it their first or second game of the season? Okay, they won the first game of the season against the Redskins, who were not a very good team, and then you just see a whole bunch of L's. They put up a bunch of points against the Steelers, and then a whole bunch more L's right here. Now, interestingly, and I have a little bit of an article on this here. This would be the second game that the Cardinals played in Minnesota at Metropolitan Stadium, where it was a home game. The first one was against the Eagles. It drew barely 20,000 people. Actually, it wound up being a pretty good game. Actually, both these games were not too bad. The Giants kind of came. I mean, this is 30-20. They won by 10, but the Giants struck kind of late to win in this one. So both games wound up being pretty good. So who knows? But you see here, I mean, the Eagles had a very good season, finishing 7-5. They only won 2 games the year prior. So you go from 2 wins to 7 wins in one season. That's a very successful season for the Eagles. And as I said right here, the Eagles won 28-24. But you'll see it. I said 2 games, right? This is a Cardinal home game, and right here, Cardinal home game. So, but I mean, you see right here, I mean, it's just a whole bunch of losses. Let me go over the Metropolitan Stadium, and I'll start going into a little bit of more of what's kind of maybe kind of happening here with the Metropolitan thing. So let me stop sharing this here, and we'll go to good old Wikipedia. Now to me, I started watching football back in 1970. Boom, this is football right here, baby. This is actually, because the Giants the Giants broke in 1970 and 72, actually had winning records. Other than that, they were just, oh my God. So, you kind of had to have a second team. Well, I have kind of an excuse, because the first time I ever watched the Giants, the quarterback on the field, getting on the center, Fran Tarkenton. Well, after the 71 season, the Giants traded Fran Tarkenton back to the Vikings, where they got him from. So, the Vikings, from 73 on, the Giants were just straight trash. So you needed a team to vote for. Maybe somebody went. Plus, I love defense, the Purple People Eaters, football outside, in the snow, in the cold, the frozen ground. Oh, man, I love it. So the Vikings were my other team. Of course, they went to 352 Super Bowls there, and of course, they lost every one of them, But the Vikings were my second favorite team. So let me show you this here. Got a little Wikipedia action here. Metropolitan Stadium. All right. Now, of course, it was the home to the Minnesota Twins as well. Metropolitan Stadium was an outdoor stadium in the north central United States, located in Bloomington, Minnesota. My goodness. Boy, it got cold there. There was obviously here, there was minor league baseball, the Minnesota Twins, the American League Baseball, the Minnesota Vikings. It was what was it? There was the Minnesota Kicks of the North American Soccer League played there for a few years. The southwest of the airport, the stadium site is now the Mall of America. So, which I believe is the biggest mall in America. So beginning in 1953, inspired by the Boston Braves move to Milwaukee, Gerald Ward, the president of the Minneapolis Chamber of Commerce, led the drive to lure a major league team to Minnesota by constructing a modern stadium built to major league specifications. Now, the stadium is just kind of weird looking. We'll go over a little bit of that and when I start showing you some pictures. Let's see. After a plan by architects won approval, groundbreaking was scheduled to begin on June 20th, 1955. On February 7, 1956, an accident occurred on the construction site when a portable heater used to cure concrete exploded in the basement. Wow. After $50,000 worth of repairs and a 3-week delay in construction, Metropolitan Stadium opened in time to hold its first game, a minor league contest. Let's see, baseball and American football. Let's see. In October 1960, Calvin Griffith announced that his Washington Senators would move to Metropolitan as the Minnesota Twins, which, Washington, at that time, the Senators were brutal. The Twins played their first home game on April 21st, 1961, with a loss to the new Washington Senators, which are now the Texas Rangers. National Football League was also interested in placing a team at the Met. Conversations had the Violet Bidwell Wolfner, owner of the Chicago Cardinals, about moving her team to the new stadium. The Cardinals moved to two of their 1959 regular season home games there, the Eagles and the Giants, to Bloomington. A preseason football game was held each September at the Met for its first 5 years, from 56 to 1960. And you can see, right, these were the. But you'll notice the attendance. The attendance for this game in particular was 26,000. So this one was by far the most. The Eagle game at 20,000. This preseason game had 14. This is 17, 18, and 20. The Met, of course, finally got a football team when the new American Football League announced Minneapolis-St. Paul as one of the charter cities for the inaugural 1960 season, which didn't happen. However, the NFL persuaded the team's owners to pull out of the AFL in January 1960 and join the NFL as an expansion team in 1961, and was later obviously named the Vikings. As it turned out, the year's delay worked to the Vikings' benefit. By the time the Vikings played their first game, the Twins had moved in and the Met had been expanded to benefit its new status as a big league stadium. The Chicago Cardinals, after playing 2 games in Bloomington in 1959, announced in March 1960 that they were moving to St. Louis. The Met was often considered less than ideal for football. The gridiron ran from around the third base to right field, north to south. Barely enough room to fit the playing field and the end zones. Both teams had to be lined up on the same side of the field. I'll show you one of those in the pictures. Usually one team's on one side, one's on the other. That wasn't the case there. Obviously, the Met provided an overwhelming home field advantage for the Vikings late in the season and the playoffs due to Minnesota's famously cold temperatures. Oh, yeah. The Vikings hosted 10 playoff games that the Met won 7 of them. Obviously, one that they lost was the Hail Mary one. And it was just a ton of things. Although the Met was responsible for bringing baseball and football to the city, it did not age well. By the early 70s, the Vikings were making noises about moving out. For instance, there was no prospect of building permanent seats along third base. The Vikings weren't willing to pay to build seats in an area that would have been in the end zone in a football configuration, and the Twins couldn't afford it. So, there you see right here, an abandoned Metropolitan Stadium, 1984. Just a shame. Yeah, it was just a shame. Red seat overlooking the flume ride at Nickelodeon, whatever that is, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's absolutely the Mall of America moved in which opened in 1992, stands on the site of what is now nostalgically, something like that, called the Old Met. So let me let's show you some pictures here. Yeah, this to me, this is, there we go. All right, this to me, this is, this was, I mean, it was just weirdly built though. I mean, if you look at it, like, can we grab this one? Is this a big picture? That's not a very big picture. No, but this is bigger. Yeah, I mean, you can just see. I mean, it's like, a lot of people here, but then there's like nothing over here, and then there's like these. So there's a football game here. Obviously, you can see the baseball diamond here. A lot of seats here, and then there was like nothing over here. There was like a little something here, and then there was something in front of the scoreboard, I think, here, and there was a gap over here, a gap over here. It's like, it was just weird. Very, very weirdly built. Like as I said, once again, here, right? See, there's some people sitting here in front, right? Now this is where the backstop, or usually behind the pitcher, there's an area where it's blackened out, so when the pitcher throws the ball, whatever the batter can see, because you got a white ball up against the background, the batter can see the ball. So this is right. So this is where that's at for, I guess, for baseball. But you just notice, I mean, it's just like a whole bunch of fans right here, right behind it. This is where the players, right over here, there was nothing. The players ran out from the over here, and they ran across the field. This is where the locker rooms were, and they ran across the field. And one team was on this side, and one team was on the other side over here, and a bunch of fans were behind them. I said, but there was like nothing over here. We got the scoreboard here. There's nothing here. There's like nothing here. Then there's a little something here. Then there was a gap over here. Oh, here we go. You show this here. Yeah, you know what I mean? There's a gap here. Then there's some fans here. It was just oddly, here we go. Right, there we are. A bunch of fans, back here. But then, just weird. I mean, obviously you don't want a whole bunch of fans over here because it blocked the scoreboard, but it was just weird. It was a weird stadium. But I mean, once again, that was when I grew up. That was it. And almost always, you can always seem like they expect like some late season game there, meaning like a playoff game, because the Vikings played a lot of playoff games there. Almost every year they went to the playoff, and they went, obviously played a lot of home games there. See right here. This is the last. I guess maybe this is after the last game that they played. Yeah. Once again, you can see there's fans here, and there's a little bit here, and there's like nothing here because of the scoreboard. And I think there might be some fans here, but then that just very weird. Like I said, but you can almost every year, almost always expect a football game, a playoff game there, because the Vikings won the division every freaking year. So they were always going to the playoffs. And here's my man Fran Tarkenton. This is probably a possible playoff game right here. This is the '69 playoff game against the Rams. This is a great one here. Joe Cap right here, running with the ball against the Rams in 1969. I mean, just what else we got? We got right here. We got the Vikings and the Packers. Then you got the out-of-town scoreboard over here. It said circa 1976. Packers were not very good then. Once again, this is with Jerry Kramer. Not Jerry. Kramer is the quarterback for the Vikings. So this was after Fran Tarkenton. It looks like they're playing maybe the Saints here. No, the Saints. Yeah, the Saints. And it looks like they're 1-20-3. I guess it was. You got the scoreboard here. And so once again, it was a shame. And as I said, the thing that they kind of is because they went from that, they went indoors, and I can't stand indoors. Football's supposed to be played, once again, I'm an old-time fart, so please forgive me. But outdoors, in the weather elements, on grass, that's football. And there's no better, I mean, maybe like Lambeau Field and Metropolitan Stadium. When it goes, once December rolled around, especially in January, it got cold. And, if you were a Viking, not that they liked it, I can't maybe say that they were really, maybe used to it or whatever, but, they knew it was coming. And especially if they're playing like the Rams from Los Angeles, and the Los Angeles Rams are going to Minnesota at like the end of December or something like that, where it might be 15 degrees or something. Whew, advantage Minnesota big time. So, to me, that was football. I said it was a shame when they did away with the stadium and they went indoors. And anyway, but I got to, as I said, there's this one article that I got and I want to share because they mentioned there in Wikipedia, the Cardinals were looking to move. And, possibly, what the NFL wanted to do was because with the new AFL coming in, the NFL wanted obviously to expand and try to get into as many cities as they possibly could to hinder, shall we say, the AFL's expansion. Like if the AFL wanted to go into, which they did, like Texas, right? Because they wanted they had the Dallas Texans. Well, we moved into Dallas as well. We had the Dallas Cowboys in 1960. There was the expansion where they wanted to go into the AFL wanted to go into Minnesota. Well, we wound up luring that one team away, right, or from the AFL and bringing them into the NFL. So the Cardinals wanted to get out of Chicago, and it's like, where do we go? And they played a couple games in Minnesota, and the attendance just was not really there. Now I'm going to show you this one article here. It's from what we got here. The Star Tribune, November 22nd, 1959, the Star Tribune. A gentleman wrote an article here. All right. Okay. Oops. Goes down here. Yeah, interesting here. AFL's first draft slated for Monday. Ooh, interesting. But, all right. Ken and Will, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the upper Midwest support major league sports. That question is being raised by a few doubting Thomases in these parts because a limited number of attractions haven't been financially successes. They cite the following as good reasons why this community will not support major league attractions permanently. Turnout of a few more than 16,000 for the Eagles-Cardinal pro football game in October. Failure to draw more than 2,000 for the Lakers home games in Minneapolis, with the basketball spectacular being a real bust. Minneapolis' poor support of its near championship baseball team in the American Association this year. Total attendance was only 150,000. These points aren't honestly presented. The entire picture must be analyzed before any definite conclusions can be reached that this area will not support the best in all spectacular sports as a permanent diet and not a hit and miss, not on a hit and miss basis. But no one was more surprised than this writer when Metropolitan Stadium wasn't sold out for the Eagles and the Cardinals. That's beyond explanation. The advance sale was so good that with a normal gate sale on a fairly decent Sunday afternoon, it was reasonable to expect that the final figures would be close to capacity. The cold facts reveal that a few more than 16,000 showed up. We can point to the mental attitude of most local fans as one reason. They were pretty hostile over Minnesota's poor showing the day before against Michigan. Oh, maybe. More acceptable is the second guess that this area will not support more than one major football attraction a week. Ooh. The Gophers get the preference as they probably should. It now appears that it's far better to schedule the pros when the Gophers are away. Another is the high price of tickets at $4 and $6 for the Sunday shows. it has been proved that's too high, but only at those prices where the sponsors in a position to meet the exorbitant guarantee of $240,000 they had to put up to get these two games. Wow. Ticket buyers must have their own team to cheer for, and that will not be the case until the Twin Cities become a member of an organized league. Today, when the Cardinals play the Giants, tickets will be at a premium. The sellout sign has not gone up, and it won't go up. There will still be ducats available at game time at Metropolitan Stadium, but not many. So what has his name up here? Charles Johnson. There you go. The lowdown on sports. So what he seems to be saying is that, just to have a team just kind of stop in there, sporadically, I guess wasn't going to be enough for that area to draw out huge amounts of fans. Now, in today's modern, if they brought another, game, to a different city, a couple of major league teams, you could have a lot more than 16,000 people show up. But back then, I guess what he was writing was that until they had a permanent team in there to cheer for, these fly-by-night games probably were not going to work out. As we also saw, there was those 5 other preseason games and none of them got more than 20,000 fans there. Not very well, not very good. So I don't know if the Cardinals moved there, would they have flourished as well as the Vikings did, or did that area want specifically their own team? Did they want to retread like the Cardinals, who, the Cardinals stink. They weren't very good in Chicago. They couldn't make it in Chicago, so let's give them to Minneapolis. So, or did they want their own team? Like the Vikings. Well, it worked out pretty well for the Vikings. So that's the reason that these couple of these games got put in there. To see maybe the Cardinals might be able to move there or not. But interesting. 2 of their games played in a different state. But it didn't hurt them, and the Cardinals were not very good. So the fact that they wound up losing both these games didn't hurt them. Didn't hurt them at all. But that's some of the reasons why the Cardinals wound up playing 2 games in Minnesota during the 1959 season. All right, then we got another one, a little bit of some more pregame here. Another thing from the Star Tribune, November 22nd, 1959, of the Star Tribune. All right, where are we at here? Okay. All right, there's Rosie Greer signing some autographed footballs for the kids. Giants fight to retain National Football lead. I guess the Oklahoma Sooners lash out at Iowa State, 35-12. Cards Eye Pro upset. Football bows out of the upper Midwest autumnal picture today in a National League struggle that finds its principals eyeing the rest of the circuit and the rest of the league with eyes on Metropolitan Stadium. The Giants, leaders in the East, face the Cardinals at 1:05 p.m. on the Metropolitan gridiron. The Giants will be keeping an eye open for reports of the Cleveland battle with Pittsburgh. They regard the Browns as their chief threat to the Eastern Crown they won last year. New York also is interested in the outcome of Green Bay, where the Packers entertain Washington, the Giants' next opponent. And naturally, the good citizens of the NFL gridirons will be pulling for the Cardinals to upset Coach Jim Lee Howell's Giants. And here's the records. So it was tight. It was tight right now, right? 8 games into the season. Eagles were only 1 game back, but at the end, right, 8 games. 4 games later, the Giants would win by 3 games. So And of course, the 49ers were 6-2. They were in first place. They were 6-1, and they would just totally fall apart. They would wind up 7-5. The spirit is good, says Coach Pop Ivy of the Cardinals. I just wish I could be sure of Bill Stacy, John Tracy, and Ed Culpepper. Howell remarks Saturday, don't worry about our gang letting down against the Cardinals. We remember very clearly our game of 2 weeks ago. It was only 2 weeks ago these two teams played each other. Nobody scored a touchdown, and we beat them 9-3. Consequently, we know what they can do, how tough they can be defensively. The Giants do not have any serious individual injuries, save for the doubtful status of quarterback Chuck Connolly, who's been seems like he's banged up like every week, and defensive back Jimmy Patton. Jimmy came down with tonsillitis Thursday night. So he's had some issues. Earlier on in the season, he was injured, and he missed the first game against the Eagles, where the Eagles put up 49 points, and Tommy McDonald scored 4 touchdowns again. So Patton's missed some time this year. The medico trainer and Connolly himself will have the final say on Connolly. It's the darndest thing, explained publicist Don Smith of the Giants. Connolly will feel chipper as the deuce on a Monday and Tuesday. Then along about Thursday, the ankle starts acting up again. The trouble is, remarked Howell, we are afraid of the Cardinals a little bit because this is a battered and bruised team. Not crippled, just battered and bruised. You see, we haven't been able to sub too much, and some of the boys have been taking quite a pounding. This is the second regular NFL battle of the season at Met Stadium, the third overall, the Packers having met the Steelers in the Catholic Welfare Exhibition game. Aside from the important games mentioned above, the league doesn't exactly lose attractiveness when you look at Philadelphia. The Eagles are playing host to the Rams, who might be butting Sid Gilman out of a job if they don't rally. No. And then you got what do you got? Biggest game of all is Baltimore, the world champion Colts, winners over the same Giants in a magnificently dramatic overtime battle last year, played the 49ers. So that's a battle for first place there. Frank Uso on the right, and Pat Summerall, Giants place kicker. Facts on today's game. Starts at 1:05, Metropolitan Stadium. The sponsor is the Minutemen Incorporated. Gates open at 10:30 a.m., so be there early. Seats at $4 and $6 till they go on to StubHub, and they're $1,352 without fees. Then you go to the cart, and your $1,352 is like $2,600 with taxes and fees. It's like, where did that come from? It's a traffic regulations. There you go. And coverage. Entertainment. The Peters Gopher Elks Drum and Bugle Corps of St. Paul. Also a halftime game with Pee Wee teams from Falden and Fred Babcock, American Legion, and VFW Post. Man, they got this game covered. 10 ways to Tuesday, huh? All right, so without further ado, what happened during this game? All right, so let's go to November 23rd, 1959 edition of the Star Tribune. Of course, Star Tribune, that's a Minnesota paper. Oops, all right, where are we at here? I got a ton of tabs open up here. I just gotta find them. Whew, okay, there we go. Card linebacker Bill Coleman watches pass sail by. Giants pride themselves on spirit, sturdy defense. Giants B cards take Eastern lead, and the Browns would wind up losing 21-20. So the Giants would now, after this game, would be in first place permanently for the rest of the season. New York Giants moved back into exclusive possession of first place in the Eastern Conference with a 30-20 victory over the Chicago Cardinals in the National Professional Football League game in Minneapolis Stadium Sunday. The victory pulled the Giants ahead of the Cleveland Browns, who lost to Pittsburgh 21-20. Giants' always rugged defense was balanced with a revived attack sparked by the return of their injured quarterback, Charlie Connolly. He had missed the 2 previous games, and consequently, the Giants scored 6 field goals. The Giants couldn't even score a touchdown in those past 2 games, and one of them was against the Cardinals, who don't have the greatest defense. From the moment that Charlie Connolly came onto the field for the second play of the second period, the Giants' attack began to move. It soon had its first touchdown after 10 consecutive periods during which the Giants had depended wholly upon the field goal kicking of Pat Summerall. Nevertheless, Summerall made his usual contribution of 3 field goals per game, his personal par in successive games with the Cardinals, the Steelers, and no, not the Bears. What are they talking about, the Bears? No, he kicked 3 field goals against the Cardinals, 3 field goals against the Steelers, and then he kicked it. They didn't play the Bears, and three field goals against the Bears, against the Cardinals in this game. Largest crowd to witness any event in the brief history of the stadium watched the professional battle in pleasant late autumn conditions of 41 degrees. That's not bad. Attendance was 26,625, accounted for by late sale of standing room tickets. The Cardinals were powerless against the Giant defense, in which the ends Andy Robustelli, Jim Kakavich, and left linebacker Cliff Livingston were the leaders. The Cardinals' net running and passing yardage from scrimmage for the day was 96 yards. Somehow they scored 20 points. 96 yards. 2 of their 3 touchdowns resulted from long punt returns. Well, there you go. Early in the third period, Bill Stacy ran 74 yards with the Giants punt, and late in the game, Bobby Joe Conrad ran 69, both for touchdowns. Well, there you go. Giants had some problems. Tommy McDonald ran a punt back for a touchdown against the Giants early in the season. The Eagles would have ran a kickoff back for a touchdown. I can't remember the guy's name who ran it back. The guy either stepped in a hole or lost his footing somewhere around like the 3-yard line and fell down like around the 2. And it was a Giant who was trailing him like 5 yards behind him. So that when the guy fell down to the ground, the Giant guy came down and touched him down at like the 1 or the 2-yard line. Other than that, the guy some said he stepped into a hole on Franklin Field. I don't know. But other than that, it was scored a kickoff return. So the Giants also was a punt return against the Giants by the Steelers, which set up their game-winning touchdown in the week prior. So the Giants' special teams, we need to have a talk with their coach. It's not impressive. Not impressive at all. These 2 spectacular runs in a short scoring thrust after John Roach had recovered Joe Morrison's kickoff return fumble on the Giants' 22 was the sum of the Cardinals' offensive strength. So obviously they didn't march up and down the field at all. After recovering Morrison's fumble, the Cards covered the 22 yards to the goal on runs by King Hill, their quarterback, and John David Crow. The latter went over from the 1-yard line. Cardinal fumbles were costly. A fumble on the second play after kickoff gave the Giants a field goal opportunity, but it was blocked. Early in the second period, the Giants drove to the Cardinals' 7-yard line, and Summerall kicked a 14-yard field goal. 1 minute and 7 seconds later, thanks to a Cardinal fumble by Stacy and recovery by Joe Bishop on the 22, Summerall was in position to make it 6-0 with a 23-yard field goal. The next time the Giants got the ball, they moved from their 25 to a touchdown. Mainly on Connerly's. Let's see here. All right, let's go. Let's see. That's another one from the Star Tribune here. All right, the November 23rd, 1959, the Star Tribune. Mainly on, I believe this should be right one, on Connolly's passes. He hit Mel Triplett for 25 yards. Then halfback Frank Gifford then hit Frank Gifford hit Alex for no idea. He hit Mel Triplett. Connolly hit Mel Triplett for 25 yards. Then halfback Frank Gifford hit Alex Webster for 25 yards. Then hit Alex Webster for 37 yards and the Giants' first touchdown after a drought of more than 10 periods. Touchdown drought. Thus it became 13-0 at the end of the half. Through the third period, the Cardinals had their brief moment. Stacy's 74-yard scoring punt return was followed by Morrison's fumble and the Cardinals' second score, all in a period of 3 minutes and 8 seconds. Such a 14-13 lead for the Cardinals was far from representative of the performance of the two teams, and the Giants brought this out immediately by recovering a Hill fumble on the Cardinals' 28 and scoring on Connolly's pass to Gifford. Early in the fourth period, a 45-yard scoring pass from Connolly to Bob Schnelker made it 27-14, and Summerall's 11-yard field goal completed the Giants' scoring just before Conrad hauled the Giants' last punt back 69 yards on the day's most spectacular run. Whereas Stacy had an open field after the first brilliant 30 yards of his long return, Conrad had to think and maneuver for every yard of his 69. Connolly's 16 passes made 8 completions, 156 yards, and 2 touchdowns. His return electrified the Giants' attack, not to anybody's surprise. So, this was not, my goodness, yards passing. Oh, my goodness, they had no yards passing. Wow. Hopefully one of these papers will have more complete stats, but my goodness, no yards passing. Somehow they pass intercepted by Chicago, picked up 1. Cardinals only had 9 first down, 96 total yards, it looks like. So, you can see the Giants had close to almost 400 yards of offense. So, all right, there was another article here. Let me go back here that I wanted to read. Go back to the Star Tribune here. Oh. November 23rd. Okay, here we go. Go back to this one here. There was another one. Hold on there. All right. Let me go back here. Oops. Stop sharing. There's a couple articles here. Let's see. The Star Tribune. There we go. All right, Giants pride themselves on spirit, sturdy defense. We got a lot of spirits, and that helps, said Jim Patton as he stripped dirty tape from his ankles. Patton is a defensive halfback for the New York Giants of the National Football League, and he was talking in the Giants dressing room in Metropolitan Stadium Sunday following their 30-20 conquest over the Cardinals. Patton spoke of the Giants' famed defensive team in which he is a key member, a fine pass defender, a sure tackler, and a strategist. I'd say we've got more spirit than lots of offensive teams, he added. You get that way playing together for quite a while, and we've been fortunate enough to do a pretty good job. I guess we take pride in our work. Patton grinned and continued, spirit is great, but of course it never hurts to have guys like that one, he said with a gesture to a nearby locker where tackle Roosevelt Greer was climbing into street clothes. Greer, 6'5" and a 285-pounder, looks the same in a business suit as he does in uniform. Immense. Good day, eh? Said Rosie with a huge smile. I think we put a pretty fair rush on those boys. Greer, Patton, and the rest of the Giants' defensive unit was praised by Coach Jim Lee Howe. I thought our defense was outstanding today, especially the play of ends Jim Ketkavich and Andy Robustelli, and linebackers Sam Huff and Cliff Livingston. Connolly, quarterback Charlie, called a fine game and got our offense moving, said Howe. And Frank Gifford and Mel Triplett did fine jobs of running. Connolly, a 38-year-old Mississippian with gray hair and a weather-beaten face, was glad to have a hand in the victory. He's the original Marlboro man. My ankle's been bothering me for the last couple of weeks, but it felt better today, he said. I was able to take it easy. Our line blocked well, and I didn't have to move around much when I dropped back to throw. About then, the Giants Heard that Cleveland had lost to Pittsburgh, leaving them in sole possession of the Eastern Division lead. The news prompted a round of cheers and backslapping. We'll win our share from now on, said bruising fullback Mel Triplett. We'll win it by ourselves, but it's nice to have a little help from the Steelers. News of the Browns' loss for a whoop from halfback Frank Gifford. That's all we needed. We'll be on our way now. In the Cardinals' quarters, lanky coach Frank Pop Ivy reflected on the outcome. They whipped us up front, and when you let the Giants do that, they'll beat you. Our offensive line was just no match for their defensive line of theirs, said Ivy. You can't do much running against that line, so you have to pass. Well, they put on a terrific rush, and our linemen couldn't hold them back. They're a real tough team, said Ivy, better than any we faced. Bobby Joe Conrad, Cardinal halfback, who made a brilliant 69-yard touchdown run on our punt return late in the game, said, I started getting hit hard at their 40 and figured they had me, but I got a couple of lucky slips and finally made it. They really piled up, Conrad said. They shoot those outside linebackers through and let Huff float in the middle. It's a whole lot of defense. And then there was one more here. What's this in here? Nope. Maybe this is it. All right. Got another one there from the Star Tribune. November 23rd, 1959 edition of the Star Tribune. Star Tribune, a lot of coverage on this game here. They did a marvelous job. Talk about Frank Gifford here. Pros jack of all trades. There's Frank ripping off some tape and stuff like, or he's wiping stuff off with his hand, like rubs resin off his hands after a long hard game. And I don't know what that is. He's spilling something on the ground, I guess, whatever's in this bottle here. But I guess he's some kind of resin on his hand. I don't know. He's wiping it off. A little of this, a little of that, and a great deal of determination and talent. The football formula of Frank Gifford of the New York Giants. Gifford, a brilliant return to normalcy in an age of pro-grid specialization. I have to be able to do a lot of things in order to compete with players at the pro level, Gifford explains. I'm not extremely fast, and I'm not a power runner, so I have to be able to do other things, which is true. He's not extremely strong, and he's not going to outrun you. Yeah, but he does other things well, extremely well. Gifford catches passes as he showed Sunday with a speeding fingertip reception on a 33-yard touchdown throw from Charlie Connolly. Gifford throws passes, 3 of them in yesterday's game, the first for 37 yards and a touchdown. There we go. So you got 2 players here, both in the Hall of Fame. Roosevelt Brown blocking for Frank Gifford. Blocking gives you aches and pains. And there's Charlie Connolly right here. What else we got here? He catches, he passes, but not on the same play, though. Pictures of Frank Gifford. Alex Webster, the second, again, the Webster set up a field goal by Pat Summerall, and the third was for 4 yards and an apparent touchdown to Webster, but was nullified because of a penalty. And a couple of extras. He is a splendid running back who blends deceptive speed with loads of football sense, and he is an adequate blocking back. Giants like players who can do several things, said Gifford. Our ends are good blockers as well as pass catchers, and our halfbacks are all good receivers. Versatility always makes for a better team. Bearing this point out, Gifford first gained All-Pro honors in 1953 when he opened strictly as a defensive back. I love the game, said Gifford, and I've tried to learn all of its points so that I would always be able to play. At 29, the handsome Californian says he is nearing the end of his pro career. He plans to retire after the 1960 season. Well, not necessarily. He played a few more seasons after that. I'll play one more year, then I've got some other things to keep me busy, said Frank. The other things are said to number a career in motion pictures. The 1959 Giants, Gifford is enthusiastic. We're starting to roll now with the old man Charlie Connolly at quarterback. Back in shape, I think we have a real good chance of winning. All right, then what do we got here? All right, we got the Duluth News Tribune. The November 23rd, 1959, Duluth News Tribune. Ooh, all right. What do they got to say? All right. November 23rd, 1959, the Duluth News Tribune. Duluth, Minnesota, that is. Giants Colts playoff looms again in the NFL. Old guy Charlie Connolly and the youthful Johnny Unitas are steering their teams toward a replay of last year's sudden death struggle for the National Football League championship, which would happen. They would have a rematch. The 38-year-old Connolly, a veteran of 12 pro football campaigns, fired a New York second-half rally with 2 touchdown passes yesterday as the Giants whipped Chicago 30-20 and took over sole possession of first place in the Eastern Conference. Still hobbled by the ankle injury that had him sidelined for 2 weeks, Connolly pitched 33 yards to Frank Gifford for 1 TD and arched a 45-yarder to Bob Schnelker for another score to erase a 14-13 Cardinal lead. 26-year-old Unitas extended one NFL passing record and closed in on another while leading Baltimore to a 45-14 thumping of the 49ers. The triumph enabled the defending champion Colts to deadlock the 49ers for the Western Conference top spot. Unitas instrumental in the Colts' 1958 playoff victory over the Giants through 2 scoring heaves. He now has 24 for the season, 4 shy of Sid Luckman's record. It also marked the 34th consecutive league game in which Unitas is connected for at least 1 TD. The Giants now lead the Eastern Conference by 1 game over Cleveland and the Eagles, who were tied for the runner-up position with 6-3 records. The Browns were KO'd by the spoiler Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Eagles edged out the Rams. The Colts and 49ers both 6-3 or game up on the Bears. Green Bay held 4th with a 21-0 blanking of Washington. Connolly had to share star billing with field goal specialist Pat Summerall, who turned into the entire Giant offense when Connolly was sidelined. Summerall kicked 3 against the Cardinals, making it 16 for the season, 7 short of Lou Groza's record. The Chicagoans had pulled ahead on a spectacular 74-yard punt return by Bill Stacy and a 1-yard plunge by John David Crow before Connolly took command. Unitas scoring once himself hit Ray Berry on a 20-yarder and Lenny Moore on a 4-yarder to pace the Colts. Well, let's talk about this game here. The Steelers pulled it out against the Browns just as they had against the Giants the week before with 40 seconds left. Let's see. Anything else? Anything else about this game here? Yeah, got a little bit here. All right. The New York Giants' long touchdown famine is over, and the scoring banquet that ended was served up by 38-year-old chef named Charlie Connolly. Connolly got back into action again yesterday after being out with an injury for 2 games and guided the Giants into sole ownership of first place in the National Football League's Eastern Conference with the 30-20 victory over the Cardinals. The sellout crowd. Only 26,000? You sure? Its appetite whetted by expectations of having a pro team here next season viewed the game at Metropolitan Stadium. It was the second of 2 home games that Chicago transferred to Minneapolis. Before Connolly came off the bench in the second quarter, the Giants had gone 10 straight periods without getting a touchdown. Connolly directed a 75-yard push for a touchdown that sent New York into a 13-0 halftime lead. Pat Summerall's field goal had given the Giants a 6-0 lead early in the quarter. Then, after the Cardinals scored 2 fast touchdowns to take a 14-13 third-period lead, Connolly got his pitching arm working and hit Frank Gifford and Bob Schnelker with scoring passes of 33 and 45 yards for a lead the Giants kept the rest of the way. Charlie called it a fine game and made our offense move, said Giants coach Jim Lee Howe. Gifford and Mel Triplett did a lot of good running. Giants' great defensive unit was just as vital. New Yorkers' big line held the Cardinals without a first down through the first 26 minutes. Wow. Summerall's field goals from 13, 23, and 14 yards out gave him 9 for the last 3 games and ran his season total to 16, which is a Giants record. which pushed him past Ben Agajanian's, who was tied with. Ben Agajanian had the record from 1954. The victory was New York's 7th in 9 games and put them alone in the East, with Cleveland losing to Pittsburgh. Now, what do we got here? All right, we got the Chicago Tribune. And so let's go to the November 23rd, 1959 edition of the Chicago Tribune. What do they got to say? Bum, 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 bum. Chicago Tribune. There we go. All right. Bears win, trail leaders by 1 game. Balk Twin Cities shift to NFL. 2 passes miss, 1 clicks, and Cardinals fall where they may. Now this is the Chicago Bears. Here's the Chicago Cardinals. Frank Gifford catches third period pass from Charlie Connolly in Minneapolis and scores a touchdown that put New York Giants ahead of the Cardinals to stay behind padded goalposts, and Gifford is Cardinals' Jack Patera. Yeah, trying to cover Frank Gifford with a linebacker. That would be a mismatch. All right, here we go. Giants beat Cards 30-20, take undisputed lead in the Eastern Division. Giants snapped out of their touchdown lethargy Sunday afternoon at the expense of the Chicago Cardinals and left Metropolitan Stadium with a 30-20 victory and undisputed leadership of the Eastern Division of the National Football League. They had been tied with Cleveland, which lost to Pittsburgh 21-20. A sellout standing room crowd. Wow. Sure, they could have got more in there, but of 26,625 sat in rather temperate weather as the professionals showed their wares, down-to-earth line play, sparkling runs, and bullet-like passes in the second Minneapolis pro game this year. Cardinals also appeared in the other contest and lost to Philadelphia 28-24. So maybe they expanded after the 59 and they had put more seats in there. I get maybe. So maybe, I don't know. Standing room shot, because when I read that article from the other guy, it sounded like there was, he could have more. Unless everybody, just before the game, bought out all the tickets. But maybe, apparently, according to this, there was a sellout crowd of 26,000, standing room only. All I know is when the Vikings moved in there 2 years later, they were able to hold a lot more people. New York, which had failed to score a touchdown in its last 2 games, although victorious over the Cardinals 9-2. All right, here we go. Here's your starting teams. The Giants starting defense versus the Cardinals starting offense. There would be your scoring, substitutions, and attendance. All right, so let's go to the next. All right, the November 23rd, 1959 edition of the Chicago Tribune. So let's take this story to the. What we had here. Zoop. The Giants beat the Cardinals 9-3 2 weeks ago, came through this one with 3 touchdowns, 1 in each of the last 3 quarters after both teams had failed to score in the first. The Chicagoans were exceedingly inept in the first half and left the field trailing 13-0, but they roared back early in the third quarter and for a few short minutes held a 14-13 lead. Although there wasn't too much difference in the final score, 6 of the Cardinals' 20 points were tacked on in the waiting seconds by Bobby Joe Conrad, who carried back a punt 69 yards to a broken field. It was a brilliant run, for at no less than 5 points, he was momentarily stopped. Wow. Bobby Joe missed the extra point, his first failure since becoming a Cardinal. Pat Summerall, the Giants, a former Cardinal, again came in for a big share of the day's honors with 3 field goals and a like number of placements after touchdowns. It was Pat who got the Giants underway in the second quarter with back-to-back field goals, the first from the 13-yard line at 151 to play and the second of 23 yards a minute later. To those 6 points, Alex Webster added a touchdown on a 37-yard pass from Frank Gifford. Triplett gains 24 yards. And setting up Summerall's first field goal, Charlie Connolly had relieved Don Heimrich, a quarterback, and sent Mel Triplett 24 yards on a delayed trap. Gifford lugged to the 7-yard line, and Pat took over. Bill Stacy received the ensuing kickoff and fumbled. Joe Biscaha, recovering for the Giants on the Cardinal 27. Connolly passed to Kyle Rote for 4th down on the 16, and Summerall got this field goal from the 23. So I guess he passed down to Kyle Rote, and he made it. He got down to the 16-yard line, and on 4th down, Summerall kicked this field goal. 6 minutes later, the Giants had their first touchdown in 3 games. Connolly opened with a pass to Gifford for 8 yards, but a holding penalty sent the Giants back to their 15. On a delay maneuver, Triplett went 23 yards, and Webster got a first down on the Giants' 36. Connolly then passed 27 yards to Triplett for another first down on the Cardinals' 37. Gifford rolled out and passed to Webster for the touchdown, and Summerall added the first of his 3 extra points. That's what made Gifford so exceptional. He could run with the ball. He was a great receiver, and he could throw the ball really well. So that was the one thing is he's like Paul Hornung with the Packers, right? Just because he's rolling out, Paul Hornung, Heisman Trophy winner, quarterback for Notre Dame, right? Just because he's rolling out, don't send all the troops up there to try to stop the run because as he's running, he's looking down at Briggs, right? Stops, gets ready to throw the ball, and if the secondary starts coming up to stop the run and you let the receivers behind you, good night, Irene. You're looking at 6 points. Opening the third quarter, Norton intercepted a pass by Connolly and returned it to the Giants' 33. Hill was at quarter and passed to Ken Hill for a first down on the 22. But after reaching the Giant 11, Hill fumbled and Kakavich recovered on the Giants' 17. Chandler soon was forced to punt, and Stacy got the ball on his own 26 and raised 74 yards for the first Chicago touchdown. Fumble by Joe Morrison on the ensuing kickoff led to the second Cardinal touchdown 3 minutes later. Morrison was hit on the 20-yard line, and John Roach recovered on the Giants' 22. Hill then picked up a first down off tackle, and after Crow had lost 1 yard, Hill went to the 1-yard line again off tackle. Crow plunged over for the score, and Conrad added the extra point to give the Cardinals a 14-13 lead. Near the end of the period, the Giants drew ahead again. It was the result of a fumble by Hill on the Cardinals' 28 after a punt. Dick Lynch recovered for the Giants, and after a 5-yard penalty, Connolly dropped back and passed to Gifford over Jack Patera's head for a touchdown. The play was good for 33 yards. New York opened up the margin after 3:09 of the fourth quarter when Connolly passed to Gifford and then hit Bob Schnelker with another aerial on the 15. Schnelker ran the remaining distance unmolested. Summerall's placement gave the Giants a 27-14 lead, to which 3 more points were added by Pat with 6 minutes to go. So let's see what we got here. So, yeah, net yards passing, none. So I guess they must have completed some passes, but I guess with the sacks yardage being taken away, I guess they netted no passing yards. So you see the Giants had almost 400 yards of offense. The Cardinals had 96. So they had almost 4 times the amount of yards. And somehow, or actually they did have 4 times the amount of yards. And somehow they only won by 10 points. But that's the way it goes. All kinds of ways to score points. They don't have any other stats, do they? No. Okay. All right, and finally we got the Daily News here. The November 23rd, 1959 edition of the New York Daily News. All right, here we go. Oh, this is it. Giants all alone at first. Chuck Sparks a 30-20 win. There you go. Minneapolis, Minnesota, November 23rd. The fans of the Twin Cities, and there was a record-busting throng. Well, so I guess that was. It was. I guess because they must have expanded, which I guess I didn't wind up reading. I didn't read everything in Wikipedia how maybe they expanded the stadium. So it was a record-busting throng of 26,625 in Metropolitan Stadium today. Crazy for big league football, and Charlie Connolly gave them a big league performance here today. So I guess this must have been, they were saying standing room only. So somewhere along the line, I guess if we want to read in Wikipedia, in the next couple of years, they must have expanded the seating capacity because where the Twins moved in and the Vikings moved in 1961. Obviously, you're not going to have a regular an NFL team that can only hold 26,000 fans. So. Still limping on a damaged ankle, the old Mississippi man came off the bench in the second quarter and generated the Giants' fanciest scoring spree of the campaign as the Chicago Cardinals were clipped by a 30-20 count. While Chuck was bringing the Giants' offense to life after 10 frustrating and touchdown-less periods, the Browns were blowing their game to the Steelers in Cleveland. That means New York is in sole possession of first place in the Eastern Division of the NFL. Don Heinrich took the mound for the Giants at the start, but he just couldn't get the offense. There he is. There's Chuck and Chuck. Heinrich couldn't get the offense clicking. Connolly relieved, and it was just like putting a new set of spark plugs in the old jalopy. At 1:51 of the second period, Summerall kicked his 14th field goal of the season from the 14-yard stripe for a new Giant record. At 2:58, he booted another from 23 yards out. At 9:01 of the same session, the Giants were out in front 13-0 as Frank Gifford uncorked a running pass to Alex Webster, good for 38 yards and a touchdown. A Heinrich to Webster aerial set up the first field goal. A Card bobble plus a Connolly to Kyle Rote pass set up the stage for the second. And a Connolly to Mel Triplett collaboration moved the leather into position for the touchdown. Gifford made a gorgeous. Is that it? Nope, that's not it. Okay. Oh, USC. Willie Wood. There you go. All right. Gifford made a gorgeous play out of the tally, running the halfback option to the right, then leaping into the air to hit Webster in the clear behind defender Jerry Norton. It was the first Giant touchdown since Alex had scored in the third period against Green Bay on November 1st at the stadium. Wouldn't you know it? Came the second half, and the Giants' defense, so sturdy for so long, broke down. At 6:07 of the third period, Billy Stacy broke. Well, it wasn't their defense. It was their special teams. Stacy broke loose with a 74-yard punt return as fullback Mal Hammack sprung him with a pulverizing block on Buzz Guy. 3 minutes later, the Cards had the lead at 14-13 on what was virtually a gift touchdown from rookie Joe Morrison. Attempting to run the ball from deep in the end zone on a kickoff, Morrison was knocked loose from the pigskin at the 15. Johnny Roach retrieved for the Cardinals on the 22. It took Chicago 5 plays from there, and they made every yard of it on the ground right through Rubber Stelly, Greer, and company. A second down keeper run of 10 yards by quarterback King Hill moved the ball to the 1, and John David Crow rammed it over. So the Cards, who hadn't been able to make a first down until deep in the second period. All right, let's go to the second page of this story. So let's go back to the November 23rd, 1959 edition of the Daily News. I'll finish this story up here. There we go. All right. And what did it say there? And okay. So the Cards, who hadn't been able to make a first down until deep in the second period, were all fired up. Connolly cooled them off, though, just as soon as the defense got the ball for him. This was accomplished as Hill threw the leather away on an attempted pitch out. Dick Lynch recovering for New York at the Chicago 28. An illegal procedure sent the Giants back to the 33, but Connolly hit Frank Gifford for the touchdown on the next play. It was a lead pass, as you're apt to see anywhere, anytime. Chuck threw it over defender Jack Patera and into the sprinting Gifford's hands at the 2. The maneuver covered 33 yards. That was the picture that you saw they showed in the other paper. This TD upped Gifford's career total for the Giants to 320, making him second only to Ken Strong, who has 351 points in the point-gathering department. Early in the fourth period, Connolly hit Gifford again for 14 yards and Bob Schnelker for 45 and another touchdown. Stacy was the GOAT on this one as he fell down on the 16 just as Schnelker glued himself to Chuck's 29-yard pitch. Summerall polished off the Giants' scoring with his third field goal, an 11-yard shot in 9:02. This put the game out of the Cardinals' reach, although they shook Bobby Joe Conrad loose on another long-range punt return in the final minute. Bobby Joe went 69 yards through the red-faced Giant defense. For the record, it had been 1,717 minutes and 23 seconds between the Giants' touchdowns. Okay. And between the Giants' touchdown against the Packers and the one racked up in the second period today. 1,717 minutes. That doesn't make any sense. I don't know. I don't think that means 1,717 minutes and 23 seconds. That's not 3 football games. And that's not 3 weeks worth of time. So I don't know what they're talking about there. No idea what they're talking about. Connolly making his first appearance in 3 Sundays, connected with 8 of 16 passes for 156 yards and 2 TDs, and even ran the ball once for a 3-yard gain. Overall, the Giants gained 268 net yards in the air to a big fat 0 for the Cardinals and 118 on the ground to Cardinals 96. And not many penalties. Fumbles lost. Giants lost 4 fumbles. Jeez. Whew. Very sloppy. Not too much in as far as the penalty. It was a 55 for the Giants, not only 19 for the Cardinals. I say this a lot. Many of the videos, not a lot of penalties get called back then. Or maybe they, but not a lot of yardage, shall I say. A lot of times, the yardage is very, very small. Like this one, 19 here. That's 55. I said sometimes, and now the games nowadays, sometimes the refs they throw the flag almost on like every play. It just makes it just unwatchable. Really, really, really unwatchable. But so apparently, I guess the seating capacity Metropolitan Stadium in 1959 was only 26 or so thousand. But obviously, once the Minnesota moved in there, the Twins, and in 1961 the Vikings moved in there, I guess they had to expand the seating capacity because when the Vikings, let's see here. Let me hear. Okay, let's go. And we'll see what when the Colts played the Vikings in Minnesota. Yeah, it was 38,000. So when the Colts in Metropolitan Stadium played the Vikings, it's 38,000. So let's see what the Vikings. Let's see how many fans showed up Metropolitan Stadium. So 30,000, 32, 38,000 against the Colts. Against that was Memorial Coliseum. Metropolitan 42 against the Packers. 42,000 showed up. So, obviously the Packers won the Western Conference or Western Division in 1960, and of course in 1961 they would win the whole kit and caboodle. So they were the team to beat in 1961. So in 1961, when the Vikings moved into Metropolitan Stadium, first year in the NFL, and they played the Green Bay Packers. And incidentally, it was kind of weird because they played the Packers in back-to-back weeks that year. But just looking at this, on October 22nd, 1961, the Green Bay Packers went into Metropolitan Stadium and they beat the Vikings 33-7. There was 42,000 people showed up. So if 26,000 people were standing room only somehow in Metropolitan Stadium in 1959, they must have done some expansion. I don't. Yeah. If you maybe check it out on Wikipedia, it might tell you they expanded here, that they added seats there and all of that. But I said, if I read everything on Wikipedia, this would be like a 2-hour long video. So, but the Giants, obviously, these two teams were totally different, going in totally different directions. The Giants were clearly a better team. The Cardinals were clearly not, and the Giants ran roughshod all of them. Although the score is a lot closer than the game was, but it just goes to show you that just on offense and defense is there are other ways to score points. And the one of the things the Giants had, they did not have good, nowadays, we have the special teamers, the guys that are really good, but and we have that a lot. It wasn't the way it was back then. Guys on defense played the special teams and all. So, but one thing that did hurt the Giants, in a couple games was giving up long special team returns, and especially for touchdowns. It didn't cost them in this game because it made the game a lot closer than it was, but it hurt them dearly against the Eagles when they played the Eagles earlier in the season. The Eagles, I said, Tommy McDonald returned a punt for a touchdown, and the Eagles almost returned a kickoff back for a touchdown. The guy didn't fall down at like the 2-yard line. But so Giants won. They were the better team, and this put the Giants in sole possession of first place, something it would keep for the rest of the season. So that's the way it was on this date, November 22nd, 1959, as the New York Giants were playing the Chicago Cardinals at Metropolitan Stadium in Minnesota. Oh, yeah, in pro football's first 50 years. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.